Okay, so we are on Ein Zayin Amud Beis 77b, and we left off middle of discussion on when there are permissibilities to wash on Yom Kippur. And the principle is, as we explained yesterday, two conditions for permissibility. A, it's not the whole body, and B, the intention is not for pleasure or for washing, but for some other purpose. And we gave two examples. We mentioned briefly the idea of ointments. We'll get back to that. But in terms of the washing, there are two examples we gave. Number one, a person who wants to wash himself after he's dirty from, the examples the Gemara gives, he's dirty from excrement and mortar. He needs to wash himself. So he's washing himself, obviously not for the sake of pleasure. He needs to get himself clean, and it's only part of his body. That's permissible. And the second example we gave was essentially some variation of negelvasser, some variation of netilat yadayim. As to what we're talking about here, he's talking about the morning ritual washing, as Taisus understood it, and as we understood the halacha. Or as Rashi says, it's a specific washing that they used to do back in the day. Every time someone wanted to feed a child, they would have to wash their hands because of this negative spiritual force known as shifta. So that's the way Taisus understood it, which either way you read it, it leaves us with the understanding that washing our hands in the morning is not only permissible, but actually required. And as we discussed, the halacha is to wash up until the second knuckle, the part where the fingers meet the palm. And there too, it's only part of the body. And the intention is not for enjoyment. The intention here is to fulfill the halachic mandate, considering that the intention is not the pleasure or enjoyment on Yom Kippur. And it's only part of the body, it's permissible. That's where we are. Now the Gemara is going to give another example of someone who immerses in water, not the whole body, but part of the body, this time much more extensively than just washing the hand or washing some part of the body, and yet it's permissible. And here's the example. Tan Rabban, our sages taught. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down from the wider set of lines, right in the middle. Taf Reish stands for Tan Rabban, our sages taught. So we're looking at a Mishnaic age text. Tan Rabban, our sages taught. Someone who is journeying or is walking to greet his father, his teacher, or someone who is greater than him. It emerges from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that the person's intention here is simply to greet the person, not even to learn necessarily. Learning is a separate halacha. But here, even you're just walking. You're walking to go greet somebody, and that's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to greet one's teacher. It's a mitzvah to go greet one's parent. And Gadol Mimenu presumably means the local scholar in town, or the local rabbi, even if it's not his, and he's like not his personal teacher, but it's a local person of repute, and he's going to greet them as a mitzvah. Then over at Savari b'mayim, he can walk through water up until his shoulders, if there so happens to be a river of water between him and his parent. And the only way to go greet them, or his teacher, his parent, this person, this great person, and the only way to greet them is to walk into water. He can do so. And he should not be concerned with the fact that he's violating the prohibition of Yom Kippur of washing on Yom Kippur. He's walking through water, literally walking through a river or a lake of some sort. So he can walk up until his shoulder. Because again, here, both of these qualifications are met. It's not the whole body, because it's only up to the shoulder. It's not the head. A, and B, it's not for the sake of enjoying himself and swimming in the water, but rather for the sake of the mitzvah of greeting, let's say, the parent that's on the other side of the water. Obviously, provided there's no other way to travel. So this is what the Gemara says. That's right. So this is even, in a way, he's taking less advantage of the water than the previous cases. In the previous case, if he was washing himself because he got dirty, at least some part of his body is dirty, or he's washing his hands, he actually does intend to do the washing. But the washing is not for pleasure. The washing is for some other purpose. Over here, he doesn't even intend for the washing at all. It's just the only other way. It's the only way to get to, so you're right. In a way, this is even more this is even less. He's less taking advantage of the water than in previous cases, because he doesn't even want the water at all. It just happens to be there. And it's the only way to get to do the mitzvah that he wants to do. Good point. The Gemara now asks like this: the following question was raised. I think I mentioned this before. There's a number of ways of introducing questions in the Gemara, and one of them is, the key word here is baya. That's the root word, beis, ayin, aleph. And when the Gemara introduces a question using that word, it means it's an inquiry. It means to say the person asking the question has no agenda. The person asking the question just wants to know. So the following inquiry was presented to them. So presumably someone came to the study hall and presented the following question and asked the people studying to respond. And the question was, Harab Eitzel Talmud Mai, a teacher going to a student, what's the law? Can he also walk through water? So here, there's a different scenario. In the previous scenario, the person who is required to have respect for the other is walking across the river out of respect and deference to the parent, to the teacher, to this great person. Over here, it's the reverse. Over here, it's a teacher going out of his way for a student. And a teacher is not required to honor the student, right? By halacha. But on the other hand, why is he going across the river? Why is he going to meet the student? Because he wants to teach Torah. So there is a mitzvah involved here, even though the mitzvah really is incumbent on the student to make the effort to go find a teacher and teach. But nonetheless, the teacher also has a mitzvah to teach the student. So can the teacher walk through water on Yom Kippur if that's the only way to teach the student on the other side? So Tashma, so they responded by saying, come and listen to the following tradition we have. The Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Chana, Rav Yitzchak, son of Bar Chana, said, Anochazisi, I saw, said Rav Yitzchak, Lezeiri, to a scholar, a sage named Zeiri, who lived maybe 2 or 3 generations earlier. He's a contemporary of Rabbi, which is a little bit before Rav and Shmuel. And so I'm guessing it's a generation or 2 earlier. So it says Rav Yitzchak, I saw Zeiri, the also Lagabe Rav Chia bar Ashi. I saw that Zeiri walked to his Talmideh, he walked to his student of Chia bar Ashi and walked through a river. So I saw Zeiri, a teacher, walking to teach a student. So this would seem permissibility. But Rav Ashi said it was actually the reverse. Hahu, in that case, it was not Zeiri who walked to teach his student Rav Chia bar Ashi, but it was actually the other way around. Rav Chia bar Ashi, Rav Chia son of Ashi, who does the Gabbat Zeiri, Rabbi. It was he who walked to Zeiri, his teacher. This is the Gemara's discussion. We'll look at the Shulchan Aruch later, as I mentioned, when we get to the end of the sugya. But if I'm not mistaken, the halacha is you can go both directions. If this is the only way to get a Torah study to actually work, then the teacher can even walk through the water to go to the student. I'm not mistaken, but we'll get there again when we get to the end of this again. Okay, Rava, furthermore, so we had now for using the water for some other purpose, cleanliness, or the halacha that requires you to wash your hands in the morning. We had now greeting somebody just out of the sake of, for the fulfillment of the mitzvah of respecting parent or respecting a teacher, walking through the water. And now we have item number 3 is walking through water for the sake of studying Torah. Now we add even more leniency. Rava shara libnei Ever Yamina. Rava allowed for those who lived on the right side of the Euphrates, the river they were living on in Babylonia. So the people on the right side of the river were able to able to walk through the river up until their shoulder in water on Yom Kippur. No, I'm sorry, I skipped the line. He allowed them to walk through water on Yom Kippur, presumably up until the shoulder. In order to watch their fruit there on the other side. So even if it's not a question of learning or mitzvah, just for the sake of preventing loss of property. Not to watch. Washing would be prohibited, but to watch, just to sit there and watch to make sure that no one steals it or whatever. Walk through the water, and so I presume they're fasting, and maybe there's a synagogue nearby their orchards. I don't know, but he allowed them to walk through the river so they can protect their orchards on Yom Kippur. Imagine that. So Amalei Abaye Rava, Abaye told Rava, Tanya the Messiah. We have a Mishnaic age text that backs you up. Rava and Abaye are towards the end of the Gemara age. So Mishnaic age text is a few hundred years earlier. So Abaye tells Rava, there's a Mishnaic age text that backs you up, where it says, Shemir Pedes, those who are responsible to guard fruit, that's their job. Oivrin, they can cross through water atzavarim b'mayim up until the shoulders, and they can walk through water. And they're not concerned for washing on Yom Kippur, because again, the two conditions are met. If not the whole body, and they're not there for enjoying the water there to get to the other side. Similarly, Rav Yosef Sharalahu, Rav Yosef permitted lebnei Beit Tarbu, for those who lived in a town called Beit Tarbu, lemever b'maya, to walk through water, lemesi leperka, to come and study, to come and hear the speech, to come and hear the sermon of Yom Kippur. To allow them to walk through water so they can hear the sermon. The Gemara comments, however, lemeza loishara lahu, but to return they didn't let them. So he said he let them come on Yom Kippur to hear the sermon, but he didn't let them go back. Because the only reason why he's letting them go through the water is so that they can come and learn Torah to hear the speech and hear the sermon and learn Torah. But once you learned it, now what are you walking back for? So you can go home and enjoy yourself? I can't permit you to do that. So he let them come to hear the speech through water, but wouldn't let them go home. So they were stuck in Shul on Yom Kippur. But Abaye said to Rav Yosef, Im Kain, if so, at the machshila la'asad lavai, you're going to make it worse for them in the future. Why? Because now that they know they can only come to the sermon, but they can't leave, next year they're not going to show up. One version of the story. Ikeda Amri, others read this story was the other way around. Sharalahu l'meisi v'sharalu l'mezel. Rav Yosef allowed them to come to the sermon and let them go home through the water. And Amalei Abaye, this other version says that Abaye responded and said, Bish, the fact that you will let them walk through the water to come to your speech, l'chaye, that I can understand. Literally means on my life, as in like, okay, I get that. You're letting them walk through water so you can hear your speech. Fine. But El Lamezel, but you're allowing them to go back. My time, what's the reason? Why letting them walk back home? Seemingly they already heard the speech. There's no reason to go back home. So explain Rav Yosef, so that he's not going to ruin it for them next year and that they won't want to come. So there's two versions of the story. One version of the story is Rav Yosef was more restrictive and said, you guys come, and then let them go back. And Abaye challenged him and said, how can we not let them go back? They're not going to want to come back they're not going to want to come to the speech next year. Another version of the story is Rav Yosef, to begin with, allowed them to go there and back, to come to the speech and come back home. And Abaye challenged him and said, why? And Rav Yosef explained, because I don't want them to never come back again to hear a sermon, knowing that they can't go back home. And again, we'll look at it when we get to the Shulchan Aruch, but if I'm not mistaken, the Halacha is you're allowed to go both directions. Okay. The Gemara says a similar, sorry? To go back home. If that were the Halacha, then Rav Yosef would have said, I'm allowing you to go home, provided you share it with others. Right? He would have said that. It seems he allowed them to go home without any condition because he wanted to make sure they had a good experience. But it's an interesting thing. It means that as a rabbi of a congregation and as a community, Rav Yosef took it upon his shoulder to find a leniency within Torah to make sure, obviously within the parameters of halacha, not violating any Jewish law. Of course not. One cannot compromise Torah for the sake of congregants. So certainly there's no compromising here because there is legit logic. In other words, the premise of the halacha, let me back up a second. The premise of the halacha is, again, as long as it's not the whole body, as long as the purpose is not the washing. In this case, they're not going through the water to wash, and they're only doing it up to their shoulder, let's say, or only to their waist, whatever it is. So the halacha is met. But nonetheless, he chose not to be more restrictive simply because he wanted to make sure his congregants have a pleasant experience coming to shul. And if they have a bad experience, they're not going to come back again. In other words, a rabbi has to take into consideration not just following the strict letter of the law and being the hero who upholds every single stringency, but he also has to consider how is his congregation going to take it, and is it going to cause them not to come back again? And if it's going to cause them not to come back again, then try to find a legitimately halachic way to make them comfortable to come. Not, God forbid, to cross the line of breaking halacha. God forbid. Never, that a rabbi can never do that, not for any excuse. But within the parameters of halacha, one should find some ways to make their congregants comfortable enough that they want to come back. And this is a case in point. You allow them to walk back home through water on Yom Kippur so that next year they'll be happy enough to come back.
Here, on Saturday when it was busy, packed, your father would get up everything. There was no talking whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right through the whole service. Next week, nobody would come.
You have to think of how you do this. Yeah, it's a very delicate balance. Anyway, similar story the Gemara tells us now. Rav Yehuda Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda and Rav Shmuel, son of Rav Yehuda. So I don't know if it's his father and son. Perhaps it is Rav Yehuda and then Rav Shmuel, son of Rav Yehuda. So maybe it's father and son. Havakaima Aguda Nara. They were standing on one side of the river. Amivra de Chitzdad, opposite a town called Chitzdad. That's what Rashi translates this. Okay, so standing on this river opposite Chitzdad. Navakari Rami bar Papa Mahachisa, and Rami bar Papa was on the other side of the river. Ramalahu Kala. So Rav Yehuda and Rav Shmuel called out to Rami son of Papa on the other side, and they asked him, can we please cross the river to come to you? The Mishal Shmaita, we want to ask you a halacha. So they're on this side of the river, Rami bar Papa is on the other side of the river, and they holler, can we come across? We have a question to ask you. Which in and of itself is a halacha question. Never mind the halacha question they do on the other side. But they actually they're already asking a halacha question on this side by asking, can we cross? Amar lei, so Rami bar Papa yelled back, Amar Rav Yehuda, I'm sorry. So Rav Yehuda responded. Okay, I'm sorry. Rami bar Papa is calling out to Rav Yehuda and Rav Shmuel, not the reverse. So Rav Yehuda called back and said, Rav and Shmuel, Rav and Shmuel, the great scholars, both agreed. Oiver, you can cross the river to come ask us your question. But Ulvad, and here's a new halacha we haven't heard till now. And again, we'll look at the Shulchan Aruch when we get there. But if I'm not mistaken, this caveat applies to all the previous halachas, which is so long as he did not take his hand out from under the hem of his shirt or the hem of his robe. He had one long, robe kind of thing. So what does this mean? Why are they not taking their hands out of their hems? So Rashi explains this means like this. It means they should not pick up their robes to make it easier to walk. Why? So Rashi explains, because halacha is on Shabbos, you're allowed to wear clothing, obviously, but if it's folded, then it looks like you're carrying it rather than wearing it. Right? What's the difference between carrying a talus and wearing a talus? If it's folded over one side of my shoulder, then I'm carrying it because it's clearly nicely folded. If I'm wearing it, it's not nicely folded. It's wrapped around me, right? So here in this case, if you lift it up like that, it's going to look as if it's a folded garment, and thus it looks like you're carrying. This is where Rashi explains this Gemara. We're going to see now that Shulchan Aruch he explains a little bit differently, and he's going to add an element, I should say, which is that when you are allowed to walk through the water, you have to do it through a shinui. You have to do it in some way different than you do during the weekday. So ordinarily, when you'd walk through the river, you would raise up your robe so you don't get it all soaking, let's say. But on Yom Kippur, you're going to make a bit of a shinui, a bit of a difference, a bit of a distinction, leave it, and that will remind you, I'm walking on here on Yom Kippur, this is unordinary, and I'm doing this only because I'm allowed to, because I need to get the halacha on the other side. So it's not about actual carrying. In Rashi's view, it's about looking like carrying, and now Rabbi adds another layer that you have to make a shinui. You have to make some change. A lot of times in halacha, when you're given leniency, dispensation to I don't want to say break Shabbos, chas v'shalom, but you're given leniency to do something on Shabbos ordinarily you couldn't because of a certain reason. So the halacha is often to make a shinui, to change the way you do it now. In this leniency should be different than the way you do it during the week. And the point is to remind you, I'm only doing this because of special dispensation, not because I'm allowed to do it wantonly. So by walking through the river with your cloak getting wet, it reminds you, you know something? It's Yom Kippur. I really should not be doing this. I'm only allowed to do this because I want to get the halacha on the other end. Following? That's what Alter adds to this reading. I don't imagine it's Alter original chiddush, but it could be either. I'm just telling you it's there, and we'll get to that when we get there. So at any rate, now the Huda tells Rabbi Bar Papa, you can come across so long as you don't raise up your robe. Ikadam, others say that it wasn't Rav Yehuda responded to Rabbi Bar Papa, but rather it was Amalei Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda to Rav Yehuda. It was the son, Rav Shmuel, son of Yehuda, who responded to Rav Papa, to Rabbi Bar Papa, and he didn't respond by speaking in the name of Rav and Shmuel, but rather said Tanina. He said it's actually Mishnaic age text, which is over. You can cross the river of Avad, Okay, but so long as you don't take your hand out of your hem and lift it up. So just two versions to the story. Either the father responded in the name of Rabbi and Shmuel, or the son responded in the name of a Mishnaic H text. Okay, I'm going to stop over here because the Gemara is going to raise now an objection from a fascinating verse in the prophecy of Yecheskel, actually a messianic prophecy. Yecheskel is given Rabbi Yecheskel. Hanavi Yecheskel, the prophet Yecheskel, is given a vision of the messianic era in the temple. So it's related to our time, the temple, the Mashiach, related to this time of the year, 3 weeks. And there, what's going to emerge is that it's dangerous to walk through water that's above your waist. And therefore, the Gemara is going to challenge, why are you allowing them to walk in Yom Kippur through water up until the shoulder? Seemingly, you can't even do that during the week because it's dangerous. That, God willing, is coming tomorrow. So when you're allowed to take risks of walking through water, when you can't take risks of walking through water, and it's all going to be tied in to the temple and Mashiach's coming and prophecies of Cheskel. So that's coming, God willing, tomorrow.
Hard for us to believe such things, but it was such a different way of